Justin asked me a question, and I started thinking about it. It's a good question. Why is there that there's not much written about John the Baptist and Christ before being around like 30 years of age or whatever? Why is it that there wasn't much written about it? And I just start thinking, like in the modern days compared to back then, what's really different besides the technology? And so John was proclaiming that Christ was already here and that he was going to reign, but they didn't understand it was a spiritual reign, that he was going to start taking over spiritually. So you look, and again, John got beheaded for holding on to the testimony of the Word of God. Just like the fifth trumpet, the beheading, the 144,000, they were beheaded for holding on to the testimony of the Word of God. And that was after the fifth seal was opened up. And then that first woe happened. And the second woe is getting ready to happen real soon. And then the third one's going to happen right after that. Like directly after that. That next week. So John was beheaded for holding on to the testimony. And then Christ was crucified throughout his entire reign. Like as he walked the earth and started telling people about themselves that he didn't like what they were doing, and they didn't like that he was doing that, so they persecuted him, and then they crucified him. And these days, as we're walking around, yeah, we're being crucified. Yep. And soon they're going to hang us, from a tree. And spiritually, that means that we are dead. We're silenced. Our words are no more. But when I'm done, talking on this channel, I'm done. That's it. Anybody that can take the pulse, you can see that's you can see what's going on all around if you know how to take the pulse. So everything back then compared to today is it's like the same. It's all one of it is you look at it literally this way, you look at it spiritually, because I don't believe anybody's dying. I don't believe anybody's dying. Just natural causes, yeah. Old people, accidents, some gangbangers that still think it's cool to be a gangbanger. But that's the way they grew up in their life, and that's all that they know. And those gangbangers, they're usually they just have a lack of guidance. They have a lack of guidance. That dog over there, it's not even real. It's just soundtrack, actually. It's quite hilarious. No, it's a dog. It's it's a real dog. No, I don't understand. When you let your dog out, if it does that, then I guess well, then somebody might be outside waiting for you, Robin. Oh man, you guys are something else. That was quite an interesting time there. Yeah, it was. It's like, where's Ashton Kutcher at? Huh? Where are you at? Am I being punked right now? Huh? Alright. See how it is. It's cool. It's cool, man. Look. I'm going to be doing the same thing to some people. But it's going to be in all good fun, though. All in good fun. So anyway, I started thinking about Christ and how did he grow up? And who told him? Did he just figure it out on his own? Did his parents tell him who he was? I mean, and the reason I asked that is because they knew who he was when he was 2 years old, right? But when did he know? How did he find out? Did he find out on his own? Or did people tell him? Or did people already know, and then he found out, and then they told him? Because he was probably walking around, just like we are today. You know, more things were actually in front of your face than they are because of the technology. It's right here now. It's the same thing, though. Christ was walking around seeing this disgust in the world. And we're doing the same thing by turning on our TV and having YouTube. We can watch videos, and you know, a lot of people lie. They just lie. Some people lie for their own gain. Other people lie because it's like they have to. And then repent in the end because it all works out for everybody. So Christ was walking around looking at stuff like, nah, man, nah, no, and then telling them about themselves. And that's what social media did. There's groups of people now that can do that same thing. Mainly 144,000 of those that have that spirit of Christ inside of them. You know, like the man-child. Not just one person, but 144,000 of them. So they all have that Christ spirit inside of them. And that's what is changing the elite's minds, because they're seeing it being fulfilled right in front of their eyes. With all, you know, that's why the Pharisees and Sadducees had so much knowledge of the Bible. They knew. So I'm just wondering, how long was it until Christ actually, I mean, I know it, you know, 3.5 years is when his spirit was poured out. 3.5 years before he was crucified. Spirit was poured out on him. And then for the next 3.5 years, he started preaching. Right? Right? So John the Baptist, he proclaimed that Christ was coming. He was out in the wilderness. And then he eventually got beheaded for holding on to the testimony of the Word of God. It's the same thing that's going on these days. But this time around, Christ, the Spirit, does not die. It never did. The body died. Like, how else are you supposed to know these things? Besides going in the Bible, looking at it. You know, the Masons, they can have that secret if that's the case, where they say that they wrote the Bible and that they're playing it out also, is the other. The third and the three. There's like two different ones. The third and the three. Those two secrets, that they wrote the Bible and that they're playing out the Bible. But even if you guys wrote the Bible, right? I'm going to say this, because who knows? Who knows? Even if you did, God made sure that the way that you guys wrote it, that you wouldn't understand what he shows his 144,000. how he shows them spiritually. They can read the same book and get the spiritual meaning out of whatever you wrote literally. Just like on TV, whatever you guys say literally, I can get the spiritual meaning out of it. You don't even have to say what you're truly saying. Just say what you're not saying, and then it's easier to understand what you're saying. But he was announced, Christ was announced, and, you know, that's where you heard the voice from heaven. But I just think it was the voice of him knowing. That's all. I don't think anybody really heard a voice come from heaven. I don't think God speaks that way, ever. It's just always through your heart. He speaks to you. Nothing's changed from these days from back then, except for technology. Everything is not literally in front of your face like it was when Christ was walking and before all the technology. Now everything's happening on the screen. And it's all a lie. It's all a lie. Even with the elite acting like and having rumors spread that they eat children and that they're mass murderers and every horrible thing that's said about them. Well, again, until I see it with my own eyes, I guess I'm going to need a sign. I'm going to need a sign, God, all right? You're going to have to give me a sign to see how terrible that these guys really are. Now, look, I had my thoughts before about the disgusting things I heard, and I just believed it. Now it's like, well, you know what? Isn't that like judging them? Like, if you don't know, aren't you judging somebody when you come to a conclusion and agree with what everybody else says? I don't know. I mean, it's usually when people have first-hand experience, that's how they know. So I don't know. I've never had that experience, and I don't think anybody's going to have that experience anymore if they did, because the Bible is being fulfilled. There's a lot of people out there that are blowing your guys' yin's minds because they can see what you're doing behind closed doors. And they're the ones that are still talking. And you guys know who they are because you hire the rest. You hire those the AMTV guy. Oh man. Oh man. Look. Whatever. I'm not an actor. That guy over there, he's an actor. He's a planted CIA shill. I'm real. Hey, I'm a critical thinker. And I'm in your face, all right? And look, I swear I don't wear an earpiece because I'm staring directly into the camera too, just like Robin is. But see, Robin, well, we know he's not listening with an earpiece, or is he? Wait, Robin, you're covering your ears. So, it's like, the guy, I'm just going to say how I feel as a critical thinker. I feel like he has an earpiece and he's listening in on what he has already read because he's a very good reader. And because he's a very good reader, he can read a script for 15 minutes straight and go fluently with his words and how he's reading it. And then when he plays it back in his own ear, he already has the practice of doing it, reading it. He already knows it, and then he can act it out. And then meanwhile, he can stare directly at the camera hole and make it look like he's not reading. Because he isn't now. I thought he was at first, but now I know he ain't. He's just a good listener, and he can regurgitate what he heard in his own ear. So these characters are, you know, look, it's entertainment. It's funny. The way he's pushing the fear, it's hilarious. It just is. But I understand his role too. He truly is the mouthpiece for the elite. I believe him with what he's saying. I do. I just know he's, you know, a plant. You know all this deception about everything that's going on in the world, but yet you believe Donald Trump is the, you know, not selected president. You're acting like it's all real. Come on, man. space aliens, right? Spaceships too, right? I think that's what it is. So when you read the scriptures, Christopher, it doesn't sound authentic. Like, it doesn't sound like you really truly know. It just sounds like you're reading and then you're listening to what you read and then you're saying it again. But, you know, it does help to put fear in people's hearts because they all went astray. And they got to turn back. I agree. You got to get this gadget out of their face when it comes to the games and everything. All the sports, the distractions. So anyway, I'm thinking that Christ back then was just that one person. And when he was crucified, when they silenced him, that after 3 days, 3.5 days, whatever it was, that his spirit came back alive. And his disciples knew and felt that spirit. Christ came back. Like, it was one of those undeniable feelings when you know. So that spirit was poured out on them. And then for 40 days, Christ walked with them. He walked with them. They seen him. You know, they seen him. There's a lot of things that you can see that other people can't. And it's right there in front of your face, like both of you. It's like one person's perspective and then your perspective. It's getting a little chilly out here. Yeah, thanks, Justin, because I didn't really have anything to talk about. It's like one of them days where, I don't know. But that turns into a good topic because it is interesting that there's no information written about. Like when he grew up as a teenager, anything like that. There's even stuff on, isn't it King David? David and Goliath, wasn't he real young? Knew a lot about him. Daniel knew a lot about him as a teenager, all the way to like 7 years old. But Christ, there was only, Christ's sakes, there was only like 3.5 years mentioned of him walking the earth and preaching. And then he was cut off in the midst, according to some people, he was cut off halfway through his ministry. And I believe he was born 7 BC. And I believe that, you know, he died in 33 AD, but that he was 39.5 years old. I'm just sticking with that math. Still fits. May 21st still fits. So, in the midst, I mean, look, people look at the word midst as middle. I look at the word midst as at the height. That's why I don't truly, fully agree with that scenario of being cut off halfway through. Because if he was cut off halfway through, then he has another 3.5 more years to go to reign on earth. But his word isn't, he's getting silenced. Because everybody that's talking on YouTube now is going to get silenced. And that's it. And our dead bodies are going to lie in the streets for those 3.5 days. It's not just 2 witnesses. Even though old Daryl and Lick there, they were looking to fulfill that prophecy for some reason. I mean, you got the wrong person. I'm not shooting anybody in the streets. Let's try. So I look at everything at the midst, as the height, at the end, like in the thick of it. Those are the definitions for it. You're in the thick of those 8 years. We are in the thick of it right now. We are at the height of it right now. So I can't see Christ, the Word of God, continuing for another 3.5 years. We're getting cut off real soon. I mean, I know, I keep saying that. The boy who cried wolf. I'm just telling you how I feel, and then, you just take it for what it is. But think about us on YouTube. Think about the ones that came up last. The last are going to be more than the first. Remember that. So think about all the people that came up last on YouTube, which resembles like the end of like your life, pretty much. At the end of your life. So for the first 30 years of Christ's life, there wasn't anything written about him. It's just that for some reason at that time, in that year, what is it, 29 AD? In that year, that's when Christ really started to recognize something in the world that he wasn't liking. And because of his heart, he started speaking about it. I don't know, let's get too cold out here. Well, let me just start with John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't comprehend it. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness. You know, I would be able to read this faster if I had an earpiece that I have already read, and then I can just go ahead, listen to. I should look into it, because it would probably, it's probably just more efficient, for me and for you guys to just mainly for you guys to just be able to get the words faster instead of dragging it out for 33 minutes like I always do. You can get it quicker, it's kind of like speeding it up like at 1.5. You know what I'm saying there, Gary Perry? So, I want to give a shout out to Gary. He was not, the same came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not, hold on. The same came for a witness, whose name was John, to bear witness of the light, So, oh, okay. I get you. So, he bare witness of the light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which liveth every man that comes into the world. It's the light. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came into his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spoke. He that comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me, meaning from the foundations of the world. And of his fullness have we all received, in grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. The law was given by Moses, like Harold Camping, but the grace and truth by Jesus Christ. No man has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. And this is the record of John. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, Who are you? And he confessed and denied, but confessed, I am not the Christ. And he confessed and denied not. He didn't deny, but confessed that I am not the Christ. And they asked him, What then? Are you Elijah? And he said, No, I'm not. Are you that prophet? And he answered, No. Then, he's not saying that he's a prophet. Then they said unto him, Who are you, that we may give an answer to them that sent us? What say you of yourself? What do you say of yourself? He said, I am the voice of the one crying in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord, as said the prophet Elijah. And they which were sent were of the Pharisees. Okay, I see. The ones that got the most knowledge of the Bible. I see. I understand. And they asked him and said unto him, Why baptize you then, if you be not the Christ, nor Elijah, neither that prophet? Like, why? What's the point? John answered them, saying, I baptize with water, which is the word, but there stands one among you whom you know not. He it is who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I am not worthy to unloose. These things were done in Beth Arab, beyond Jordan, where John was baptized. Beyond Jordan. Jordan's coming into the picture now with the Golan Heights. Everything around that border is, it's coming in the picture very clear, ain't it? So the next day, John sees Jesus coming unto him, and he says, Behold the Lamb of God, which takes away the sin of the world. This is he of whom I said, After me comes a man which is preferred before me. For he was before me, and I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Israel before. Therefore I am come baptizing with water. And John bare record, saying, I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it abode upon him. Now, do you really think he actually seen something with his own two eyes, or did he see the Spirit descending upon him? Like, he seen him. In other words, he's been watching him. He sees him. He sees it coming upon him. And, but who knows? I knew him not, but he that sent me baptized with water, said whom, and I saw and bear record that this is the Son of God, after the same which he is baptized. Okay, upon him whom thou see the Spirit descending and remaining on him, the same as he which baptizes with the Holy Ghost. And I saw and bear record that this is the Son of God. Again the next day after John stood, and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he said, Behold the Lamb of God. And these two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and he saw them follow him. He knew that they were following him. Then Jesus turned and saw them following him. He said to them, What do you seek? And he said to him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, where dwellest? Where do you dwell? Or abide? You know, like where do you live? And he said to them, Come and see. So here comes the red letters. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. One of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said unto him, We have found the Messiah, I guess that's Messiah, which is being interpreted the Christ. So they found him? Okay, well I mean, see what I'm saying here? It seems like they were watching him. Seems like they seen him. They found him. And I think after I read this for like the first time all the way through with the understanding I have now, I'm going to do that, and it's probably going to make a lot more sense to me when Christ knew that he was the Christ. At like what age? Because it had to have been towards the end of his from the time he got silenced. And he brought him to Jesus, and when Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon the son of Jonah. You shall be called Cephas, which is a stone. The following day Jesus would go forth into Galilee and find Philip. Okay, so now the following day Jesus would go forth to Galilee and find Philip. So now Jesus is finding people. It seems like before they were finding him, and then now he's finding others. It's the way I take it as I'm reading it. It could change though. Now Philip was, I'm not going to have time to read it, but I don't know, it's interesting. I want to know how Jesus found out who he was. I want to know how anybody finds out who anybody is. Besides